All right, everybody. Welcome, 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 welcome. We are just hit 2 o'clock. We're going to wait just a little bit here and let everybody kind of jump in here. Um, Also, just confirming that everybody's got the correct link. There we go. We got Cedric has jumped on here, which is very good. Awesome. We're going to let Cedric here. We're going to let some other people here in just a moment, see if we can get a few more. But yeah. All right, everybody. So we are jumping in. We're going to be talking about some Facebook ads, Meta ads, Instagram, and what we are doing. So right now, we're just going to let some more people continue to kind of jump in here, and we are going to be getting into the weeds here and talk about paid media. When it comes to fundraising, it is something that is very hit or miss. Being completely transparent, it's something that I don't focus on a ton in our outreach. Because there's just so much that gets into it, how expensive it can be, how the risk to reward is quite high, and then just how this all works. It can get very, very challenging if you've never jumped in, or you're not a media buyer, or this is just something that you don't do on a daily basis, or your company's not set up to do it. There is a absolute ton to learn and jump in when you are jumping into paid ads. So, if you've ever came to these events, let me introduce myself real quick. My name is Jeff Fuzzy Wenzel, CEO of Pre-IPO Hype, also CEO of Invest Guru and Kickizer. Why do we have three companies? Well, they all do something different. If you go to pre-ipohype.com, you'll see that is our marketing and CRM system for when it comes to deals. We build out we basically white label and build out your entire outreach system to go after investors. If you are looking for just newsletter help, meaning that you want to be in newsletters or want your deals featured, we have over 102,000 subscribers, and we put out content all the time over there. And then if you're just looking at data, and we'll be getting into some data portion of this conversation today too, you can go to kickizer.com, and that's KICKIZER.com, and that is if you are just looking for data. So with that said, we're going to jump into it. As people jump in, we'll let them into the room here. If you've got questions, please save them to the end. There's also a chat feature. You can go ahead and throw any sort of chat question that you have in there, and we will jump into it. So let's go ahead and jump in. Let's talk about paid ads. All right, you should see my screen here. It should have just switched. So if you've never looked at the back end of Facebook or Meta, this is what it looks like. You're seeing actually my ad account for some of the deals that we have running right now. This is just kind of an overarching thing. We'll get in the weeds here in just a second on it, but this is just what it looks like and what the platform looks like behind the scenes and what I'm in all the time. When it comes to paid ads, there's a lot of stuff to be thinking about. One, you've got to be thinking about creative. What are we putting out there? Whether it's video, audio, images, clips, social media type posts. What's the branding, the look, and the feel? You've got to be thinking about marketing and your messaging. Do you have any funnels built? What are you optimizing for when it comes to paid ads? Because you can optimize for a bunch of stuff. You can optimize for just traffic to your page. You can optimize for conversions. A lot of people in investment will do filling out a form. Well, once somebody fills out a form, then what happens? What's the communication that comes off of that? So you have to think about, what am I optimizing for? What am I doing? What's the data side of this equation, right? So if we're gonna move over here and just kind of think about it. So thinking about just who are we reaching out to? If you guys might remember my visuals from if you've ever come to these events before, we just try to think about where are people in the journey of learning who you are? What type of content do you have? Are you asking them to explore? Are you asking them to take a really strong call to action? So ads play a part of all of this. So it's always important that you're thinking about, well, what am I really wanting these ads to do? And again, that's what a lot of people get in trouble with, is that they've never done this, so they just jump in and they just boost a post on Facebook, and they're like, all right, that should be it. And it's much more complicated than that. Let's look at a couple more visuals while we're just kind of thinking about this here too. The other part of this too, I really try to get people to think about, where do ads fit into this upside down triangle, right? So I always think about, how are we opening awareness? So again, ads are a great opportunity to open up awareness, meaning that I keep seeing this ad in a feed, right? In my meta feed, my Instagram. Then you start to think about, well, are they getting different ads if they get further down the funnel? Are you starting to show some more intent by them maybe watching a longer video? And then obviously, are they joining something? Are they taking that action of opting in, purchasing, investing, etc., right? So you're trying to think about too, where do ads sort of fit inside of this triangle, and what type of creative do I need for each one of these buckets, and what works best or what doesn't work best, etc., right? So again, lots and lots and lots of little things to be thinking about. Another way to think about this too is, where do ads fit if you go to the old school funnel? Where are ads fitting into this? Are you driving them to a landing page? Are you optimizing for people who have already invested? Are you retargeting people, right? Another thing I start to think about too is I start getting into different types of scripts. What scripts should we use? And for me, these 7 Facebook ads kind of work almost all the time for me. So if you can't, you can screenshot, or I can send these out a little bit later. But I start to think about, do I have an us versus them, right? So if there's, a couple companies maybe in the same vertical on a platform, hey, we're doing this over somebody else, right? So trying to get sort of an us versus them type mindset. Number 2, founder stories. These work really well too. Just, what's your background? What's your story? A lot of times the biggest issue with number 2 is just getting a founder to actually participate and telling their story, or getting in front of the camera. Sometimes they get a little nervous about that. Before and after. Hey, this is where we were last year. Look at where we are now. That works great too, to show investors that you're actually moving the ball forward. 3 reasons why. A press release screenshot. So again, almost all my campaigns come to me and they've done some sort of press release. You can literally take a screenshot of that and go ahead and put that up as just an ad, right? As a thing. Static images work really well. And then number 7, we write a lot of our creative around problem, agitation, and solution. So again, really works well in the investment world, because most of the time that's how your pages are built out. What's the problem? What's the solution? Why you're the expert, right? So just thinking about that. And then over here, I've got just some other ways to sort of think about this. Education can work quite a bit. I think about hooks a lot when it comes to paid ads. How do I get that person to at least stop, in the news feed? One of the things I do a lot of education around is getting people to understand, where are they in that hook, right? And people are just literally doom scrolling, right? They're just scrolling all day. So how are you getting that person to stop for a split second to watch or look at your ad, right? So I'm always thinking about what is that potential hook up there? What's a pain point? How are we, trying to exaggerate what that pain might be? How are you polarizing maybe some of the competition in your space? What are some of the visual benefits? So again, I'm going to go ahead and put, let me share this out for you guys. Let me grab a link here real quick. I'm going to put this in the chat if you guys want to grab this Figma file here, because this is what I usually typically work from. But again, these are just kind of some ideas to be thinking about. Another thing that works really well for ideas is what you see here. Now, this is what I have set up for myself. You would want to customize this for your world, but so my main thing I talk about is equity crowdfunding, fundraising in general. And these are all sort of topics around it. And then I have the different subjects that could come off of this. So sometimes I'll be like, man, do I want to make any ads today? Like, what should I make it on? So I might start equity crowdfunding videos, tips, right? And I can now make a piece of content around that. I can talk to the camera. I can slice and chop that all up. And now I might have something that I might want to go ahead and use as an ad. So this is a good exercise too to think about in your space around how do I, again, if you're stuck making content, this is a way that kind of, shakes the cobwebs out and gets you going a little bit here. Okay, so like I said in the beginning here, we want to think about where people are in the flows and the funnels. We want to think about how we're optimizing and what we want the ads to do. Now we also want to get into budget, and budget is where I think a lot of people get freaked out when it comes to budgeting for paid ads. So we're going to work out some rough math here, and we're going to talk about it here. So let's say you want to do $50,000 in investment per month. Maybe your average investment size is roughly about $700. Your cost per 1,000 impressions. So that's going to be how much does it cost to put your ad in front of 1,000 eyeballs, right? 1,000 impressions. $34, give or take, somewhere around there. Out of those people, what's your click-through rate? And this is what scares a lot of people is that cost per acquisition. It's probably going to be about $300 to $350 just to get that investor, right? So what you're looking at here is going to be, hey, this is about a 2-to-1 return on ad spend. It means if I'm spending 25 grand a month, I'm bringing in 50 if these are my numbers. And this is not crazy. Now, what gets challenging for a lot of companies doing paid ads is, do they have access to the capital that they're raising, right? Can they do rolling closes? Can they pull it out? Are they paying agency fees on top of this? What's the creative budget? So this what you're looking at here is just, I gave Meta 25 grand. They helped me spit out 50 grand, right? Now, but again, that looks okay. That's a 2-to-1. Most companies that I work with don't have this type of budget. Also, this is not a guarantee that this happens. This is just getting some ballpark number here. So you start to see around, all right, well, just to work the math out, just to stay in this math equation, can I get this average investment size to here? And can I get this to maybe that, right? Now, all of a sudden, there's some real meat on the bone here. So now I start to think about, well, do I have a perk or something around that $1,000 that might move everybody up a little bit, up to another tier, right? I start thinking about these things. Is there something I can talk about in my outbound? Just can I really strive to get people to put in $1,000? And then do I spend more time on my creative, right? And really just focus in and maybe not use all kinds of AI slop, but just really focus in on I'm going to really make some good creative and see if I can get that cost per acquisition down so that I can start to see a little bit more of these types of numbers. Because now you can go, all right, yeah, I can start to see some scale here. But, the opposite can happen. You can get a whole bunch of people coming in around, $400 as an average, and this is costing, $350, and you are basically underwater. I mean, I wouldn't even recommend this. So you just start to see, I always stress too, you got to go into this with some math equation. The other part of this too is if you've never ran any sort of paid ads, turning budgets on and off or having big swings is not what Meta wants. Meta wants you to say, I'm going to give you 50 grand or 25 grand every month consistently. I'm not going to be, messing around with the ads. You can count on me as a good business partner to give you X amount of dollars and for you to put my ad in front of people. So again, a lot of mistake is people might come in and say, oh yeah, we've got an ad budget, right? And we can totally do this. Excuse me. My ad budget is I've got 10 grand to spend, Jeff, let's go. But if I don't get a return in that first month, I blow through their budget, right? And the other part of this too, just so you know, and we'll get into this a little bit later too around paid ads, it takes time to build a relationship with Meta. You don't just go on Meta never spending any money and on day one spend 10, in 30 days spend 10 grand. Like, they just aren't built like that. It's built to build a relationship. So you've got to establish that. You got to establish a billing record with them, right? They don't just let you spend X amount of dollars without making sure that you can actually cover it. So there's a lot of this back and forth behind the scenes that has to happen, even if you have the budget to spend on these things. So again, it's not something that just poof, Meta's going to give me all my money. There's just so many factors. We're just going to keep kind of getting into them. Because probably at the end of the day, this will probably scare most people away from doing paid ads, because it's just, there's so many variables, and if the budget's not there, the budget's just not there. So yeah, but again, if you've got a good relationship with the platform and the rolling closes are happening fast, and you're getting access to capital out of the raise so you can put it back into paid ads, you're building this relationship, then yes, this can be a real vehicle, but we really got to think about those numbers at the end of the day. All right, so let's get into making sure that we're set up structure-wise with our what we call our events manager or our pixel. This is another thing that basically haunts almost every single deal that I work on, or I jump in and I see that basically pixels are not set up correctly. So what am I talking about when I say a meta pixel? You can see it right over here. A meta pixel is going to be this little code that is on all of our pages. So it's on our landing pages. It's on our, if it needs to be on the offering page. This is what feeds the information back to Facebook to tell it that the action that we wanted happened on our site. Now, here's some of the things that happens though in this space. If you're working with platforms like Start Engine, they typically prioritize their pixel over your pixel, meaning that they own all the data. This, what you're seeing here, is the gold, right? In your deal, in your raise. We do about 40 to 50,000 pixel fires per month off of my master pixel, and that from just all of the kind of the investment clicks and triggers and signups that's happening kind of per month in our world, right? That's still not very many people at the end of the day. It may seem like a lot, but it just isn't that many people, right? You can see it down here. These are our total events, right? Events are people taking action. So if in a scenario you're working with Start Engine and they prioritize their pixel over yours, it means that their pixel's getting all this data and yours isn't. Or yours is getting what we would refer to as like dirty data because yours is like further down the stream than where Start Engine is, right? WeFunder does allow you to put your pixel on here. Platforms like Silicon Prairie are really good about kind of connecting and making sure that we're seeing attribution and seeing all this data report back and forth. But then there's platforms like Republic that have no pixel, no Google Analytics or anything. And you're like, holy cow, what just happened? The other part of this, that when we're going to continue to stay in the nuances here of sort of pixels, right, is it's important that your pixel is set up correctly on your page to optimize for whatever it is, like whatever event you want it to monitor. So what I mean by this, let's say you put your pixel on WeFunder, you go to make your ad, and you say, I want to track landing page views. If I'm running ads, anybody that goes to my page, right, I want to, this is how much it costs. Here's my landing page views. I'm optimizing for that, all right? And it's costing me 35 cents every single time somebody lands on a page. That's what I'm optimizing for. But I can also optimize to fill out a form. Hey, I just want you to show interest. Well, maybe that costs $40 every single time somebody fills out a form. That doesn't mean that they invested. It just means that you got a lead from Meta. Meta, put that information into a form, and you now have that information, right? So that's usually between $30 to $45, kind of give or take, pretty consistently for leads off of Meta. Then you get cost per acquisition. Let's go back to this graph over here, right? Cost per acquisition is going to be like, how much did it cost me in ads in regards to Meta for them to get me an investor? And if it's costing me $224 to get a $1,000 investor, okay, that's okay. I'm in the black, not the red, right? But if I do this, right, right, like, guys, makes no sense. Right, we're losing money here. So again, you want to, that's that cost per acquisition. Now, here's another little dirty dark secret here that I recommend you writing down. The way Meta works is that you have to be sending data through these pixels, right? The more data that Meta is getting, the better they are at finding people who are engaging with other raises, other deals, other communities, other social posts. They're showing intent to invest, right? So now you get into what you see here, why this is my goal is, again, about 40,000 to 50,000 people per month are engaging in my ecosystem and are looking at deals. They're investors doing stuff. They're taking action, whether it's forms, going to pages, reading blogs, going to newsletters, right? So to start creating that much pixel traffic, you've got to spend some money, right? Now, so I spend money on top of, I have just this large ecosystem, right? 100,000 people in my newsletter. So all that stuff's happening in my world. Most companies cannot build that from the ground up. So a couple things start happening. One, you might just want to rent data like this, right? And that's kind of how Start Engine does it. Like, hey, you're just kind of using their data. Good and bad is like, you don't own this, I own it, right? So you have to kind of think about that. Or you've got to be patient enough to start building up that data on your pixel, right? Because again, the more data that comes through it, you start creating silos of audiences that Meta says it goes and finds based on the behavior, right? Okay, so that's happening. The other part of this is, if you cannot spend, I'm going to go back to here, let me put this number in. Whatever your cost per acquisition is, you should be spending 3 times that per day, right? Per day, to get enough data through the pixel for this pixel to get smarter. So let's break that down again here. So if I had one ad set running right now, on the numbers we see here, I need to be spending roughly about $600 to $700 per day for one ad set, just one ad basically, to get enough traction through the pixel for it to actually get smarter. So again, this is another thing that people come in and they're like, well, Jeff, we just want to spend $200 a day. You're not spending enough. You're wasting money. I would, at that point, I'd be like, don't spend anything. Like literally, don't spend a dime. You've got to be spending 3 times that. So now you start, let's say this happens, right? Maybe this is your cost per acquisition and it is costing you $430 to get a $1,000 investor, right? That means, again, 3 times. That means I'm spending $1,200, give or take, right? For one ad per day to get enough traction through the pixel. Otherwise, there's just no audience. There's no crowd. So this is an analogy to that for you guys to sink in here. It's called crowdfunding, right? There's a crowd somewhere, whether you built your own that you paid for, or you are renting somebody else's, mine, Start Engine, somebody else. I don't know. You're renting somebody else's audience that doesn't know you. You've got to go and spend money to get to this access to this audience to start telling your story, right? And you're paying the tolls basically in this space, right? And again, we haven't even gotten into creative yet. We're just talking about setting up nuances to get the data back and forth, right? So let's go back to this event manager. So we just talked about 3 times that cost per acquisition just to get enough data through that pixel, right? So now you get into and you go, all right, well, why, Jeff? What does that mean? Well, let's look at some of my ads here. Now, I'm doing very small ad spends. So what I'm doing right now is a lot of testing of user-generated content. So I'm not set up right now where I'm doing a lot of cost per acquisition or lead gen, because I have a whole lead gen mechanism inside of my CRM system that I use for clients. So I'm not going to get too far into, I'm not doing a lot of strategies around getting conversions. I'm driving traffic right now is what I'm doing. So let's look at what happens if we jump into some of these. So you see how it says learning? Well, what that means is that the pixel is still learning. It's still going out and trying to find enough information about these 3 ads. And I'm kind of testing. So I'm now logging in and going, all right, now, actually, this is an interesting one. I haven't looked at this today. This is really odd. So this image ad, and I'm just testing the 3 different images. This is costing me 50 cents for a landing page view. And this is the most that people have engaged with. You can see, like, Meta keeps showing this one, but these are costing me $0.25, but Meta is not showing it. So even when, all right, these 2 creatives are winning out over this, Meta's going, nope, we're sending this one, and it's going to cost you more money. Okay, cool, right? Let me see if I can find one that's in yeah, you can see how, so now, so like these 3 ads, you can see that they say active. They went past the learning phase, meaning that enough people are starting to see this ad that Meta feels like it has a pretty good idea of who to show it to, and it's not learning anymore. What I'm trying to find is ones that say like so these are active. So what you'll start to see too is if it sort of ran out of audience or it's ran out of people to show, it will say something like learning limited, and it'll be red. And that just tells you that you should really go in and adjust these ads, that they're not performing. But again, you can just see here, look, this is let's look at this one. Interesting. That's 61 cents, right? So this is the other part of this. You're also testing all these creatives, right? And Meta makes it incredibly confusing. So I'm testing like I said, user-generated content. I'm testing podcast content. I'm testing images, kind of whatever the newest hot little trend is that you might see on a TikTok or or an Instagram that like, oh, this is what you got to do. I might try some of those. The other things that you'll start to see too is Meta is always giving you all these like recommendations that again just make you spend more money. That's what their job is to make you spend money, right? So I'm in here trying to balance this act between, yes, I need eyeballs, but I also need the eyeballs to make sense. And then sometimes you get one where you're like, yeah, it's costing me 8 cents. So now I can 8 cents a landing page view. So I might go back and look at, well, what is it? And it's these, yeah, all three of these worked really well, which is great. So I might be able to go back to this client and say, hey, you should maybe give me a budget, because I've got some creatives that are landing in the world of Meta, and we might, this one here, this one's 9 cents. This user generated content. Look at that. So I might come, and I'm going to show you this one here in just a second. So remember Rachel, because we're going to talk about Rachel here in just a second. So this one's working. So again, I might come back and say, hey, let's put some budget behind her or this ad because it's starting to perform a little bit better. Okay. Now, let's see what else we got to get into. So we got it. Yeah, so you have to think about making sure that pixel or that event manager is set up correctly. We have to make sure that when we're in here that we are, have everything set up. The websites are good. You're seeing data basically transferring back and forth. You're setting up your events, what you want to optimize for, right? So you can go in here and you can put your website, and it should say, hey, we're looking for a conversion. We're looking for a lead. We're looking for, just a click to a page, right? So all of that sort of happening kind of behind the scenes here too. The next part we're going to get into is now kind of thinking about an audience. Who am I sending these ads to, right? And this is where you need investors, right? So we're talking about investment today. So there's a couple things that we can start to think about. Let me see if I can go to my audiences here. So this is a 10-year-old ad account you're looking at here. I have been using this ad account since literally a decade at this point. So I have all kinds of different audiences. But I'm going to try to create an audience from scratch here. Let's just do this here. Can I do this? Actually, no, we're going to do it a different way. We're just going to make a quick ad here real quick. Let's back it up. What I want to show you is just some of how we're going to try to find an audience. Let's go to create. And we're just going to do traffic. So ignore what I'm doing right now. I want to get to the audience building section of this. So this is all just a test. All right. So now we're going to get into let's start looking for, who should we send this ad to? So we're going to get into our audience control here. All right. Edit. All right. So for most deals, we know we're going to want people in the United States. That is the majority of people. Now, there's a bunch of different ways that we can sort of structure this. More than likely, you're going to probably want to have people, 35 and older, 35 to 75. You want to think about the age range. If we go into audience here, yep. So we're going to start to clean this up. So like I just said, we're probably going to want, 35 to, 60 maybe. If we have a custom audience, it would go here. I'll talk about that here in a second. Depending on your deal, most of them, you probably want men only, truthfully. And now we want to start getting into you need let's do equity crowdfunding. Let's just see what comes up with that. Right. So you're going to start putting in and seeing what meta starts popping up. All right. So crowdfunding, that's in there. So that's about 3.8 to 4.5 million. Okay. So now I just put in investment. But you see this audience? It's like 7,000, 8,000 people. Not very big audience. And the way Meta works is that actually you want the bigger the audience, the better it is actually for them. It's one of those ones where you're like, does that make sense? How about so maybe Kickstarter could be in here if you want that. Investor. Let's look, maybe angel investor. Let's see what that pops up. So some of these you just don't really know. So now I want you to look at this. Their total audience is about 6,000 to 7,000 people. This is going to be another one. I want you to kind of remember this. Now, this looks gigantic. 63 million people are angel investors in business finance. I'm not sure about that, Meta, but okay, we'll put it in there. So basically, this is going to keep making an audience. You can see how large it's getting here too, right? You can define it further. You can also go in and say, hey, I want to actually exclude people, right? I only want certain places. Yeah, so we're in the United States. You know, yeah, so you can, like I said, you can start to define and get into these audiences, but you can just start to see here that's a pretty big audience. It's going to look for angel investors, crowdfunding, and investor, Kickstarter, and again, you can keep doing this, right? You know, I guess venture capital, but this is where I struggle with a little bit with Meta. Okay, so this is now I'm getting into these are my opinions, they're like belly buttons. And this is what I think. I have no idea what this means. I have no idea. You know, by putting in venture capital, 85 to 99 million people are tagged venture capital. What? Right? Also, so again, there's no signals here. There's nothing like this is just all right. This is what Meta says. We bow to Meta and we move on. I don't do this. I'm going to show you what I do. I mentioned that we have the data company, Kickizer, and the reason that I spent so much time there is because I can't stand what I just did here. This drives me bonkers. So what I'm going to do in my world is I'm going to go over and build my own audience, and I'm going to do it a couple different ways here. So the first thing is I'm going to build my own pulses, and if you might have seen this already, but this is our audience size. So that's our available audience. These are our signals. Signals are anything online or offline that we can track. So if somebody opened up a Robinhood app, invested, those are signals from last week. So this gets updated every Wednesday. So today's Wednesday, so all this data is getting updated. I'm going to have all new data tomorrow for all my companies, all my campaigns. So what I can do here now is I can go ahead and put an angel investor, right? I know I need that. So what I'm finding is I got about 22,000 people from last week that signaled that they're an angel investor, right? And signal, again, it is also a little gray area. This could be a bunch of things. It could be that they invested. It could be they got the Robinhood app. They moved some money around. They filled out a form. They got their certificate to be accredited. I don't know. It could be a bunch of stuff, right? But it's in their trading and financing. You can see how it's categorized here. So even in this world, if I pulled this audience, which I could, I'd have 20-some thousand people. So if I go back over here and I just look at that angel investor one, where's that audience? Let's go back. Where were we? Here we are. You know, angel investing here was like 62 million, right? So again, there's no focus at all on this. It's just, I mean, that could be anything, anybody at this point. So again, I think frankly, I think it's bullshit numbers. So I'm going to come back and I'm going to, all right, well, I'm going to continue to build out my audience over here. So I have that. I want angel or alternative investment. Right. So that number jumped up quite a bit. Let's see here, invest in startups. So again, that number is going to jump a little bit more. So now, if I had this audience of 900,000 people, give or take, I hit this pulse, I can upload this directly to Meta, and now what I have is what we call a custom audience. So if you guys remember a second ago, I went through custom audiences. What I mean by that is I can go into these audiences, and you can see I have some of these already built here, right? But I can go in and say, hey, I want to talk to these investors. Well, that number, I'm going to get rid of these here. So, that's about 50,000 people that Facebook could find, right? So that audience is pretty focused. So now I could run my ads to that. So that's what I do quite a bit in my world here is I hone this audience down, to what I think is actually achievable. And I kind of ignore some of the meta. I kind of ignore some of the bullshit, basically, that I think that they're selling us from running lots of ads. And I'm like, you know what? I just need these 50,000 people to see my ads consistently, and I'll pay. But I have other strategies going. So if I had, so in my world, I have these people, they're getting other communications from me, right? So that's how I start to think about the data side of this equation. Now, what also happens, and again, this is where if you're going to go down the paid ad and you're going to spend money, what you also want to do is think about, well, there's tools out there, like I have, that we use to put our own custom pixel to get the data from anybody that lands on our page so that they don't take an action. So I'm going to show you what that looks like here right now, right? So we were just looking at this Easy Life. So we have about 701 people since December 10th that we were able to match by people who just landed on the page. So the ads, I have their information. So let's go look at some people, right? Let's look at this guy right here. Let's look at his journey. All right, there's the email. Why is it not pulling? Oh, wait a minute. Let's look at this journey. Let's pull up another one. Oh no, is it not working? So what it does is it usually picks up the website page log. I can see everywhere they went. I can get their IP address. Let me refresh and see if it's just... Wednesdays are a bad day to do this because it's all refreshing. But yeah, so I got his Gmail account. I can see the journey that they went on. Usually something's, obviously that's how it works. Something's a little bit wrong. But I can go through these. There's their IP address that we picked up. So I know that the 25th is when we validated the email. This one was just February 2nd. February 4th. That's a little bit ago. It's not pulling up. So we're getting this data from running these ads of people who land on our page. We're even getting phone numbers, right? So we're enriching this data almost immediately. So very quickly, even if I'm running ads and I'm just dropping them off on the page, like they're just getting to the page, but no real actions happening, I'm still grabbing that data. So this is why, what you're seeing here is why I get so frustrated with platforms like the Start Engine, the WeFunders. Like, if I can put pixels like this on there, I'm very, very dangerous, right? Like, in a good way. Like, I can get this information so that we can follow up. We can put them in different journeys so that we can go ahead and do this, right? Yes, we got awareness. They got into our world, and now we're letting them get deeper and deeper into our flows and funnels, okay? So again, a lot we just went into. I want to talk just a little bit about creative here because I want to show a couple things here. But yeah, so this is just structure. We haven't even really scratched the surface on structure. There's just so many things to it, right? How we build out the ads, how many ads should go into each ad set. You can see here how I have mine structured. We have different funnels, what I'm optimizing for. I'm testing between funnels, right? I usually have between 3 to 5 funnels per project. So I'm testing between all of those. But so there's just a lot. But let's move over a little bit to creative because I want to be cautious of everybody's time here and get you guys out of here because I appreciate everybody coming and hanging out here and chatting about paid media kind of behind the scenes. All right, so now we get into creative. So I use a couple things here. One, if you're not using Love Art, jump on it right away. Unbelievable it's basically kind of replaced my whole design team. I can go in and basically prompt everything I need, load up pitch decks, campaign pages, and it's spitting me out my ads, square, vertical, everything I need, click of a button. Yeah, loveart.ai, unbelievable. It's like the newest sort of thing in my world that I'm just like, my God, I don't need my design team anymore. So those ads I showed you for this company, Easy Life, they came out of here, right? There they are, right? My design team could not do better than this. So yeah, and all I do is I prompt it with the campaign page, PDFs, anything I might have, brand guides, and it's going to go and bloop, build me everything I need. So that's going to be sort of your image ads. The other thing that we've been doing a lot, and this is a big time I'm testing, is I'm actually testing user-generated content, AI user-generated content. So I want to show this one right here. So what I'm doing right now is a couple things. Before I show this, let me show you how I build this real quick. So what you're seeing here is not real. This is AI, and I think it's going to continue to get better and better, but it's allowing me to kind of create the exact person I want delivering the ads. So what I'm doing here to start is I'm going into my chat GPT. And there's a whole bunch of these, but I use this UGC video script creator, and I basically click this button and start answering the ads or answering the stuff that pops out. And this is going to spit me out a script, right? It's going to give me a 30 to 45 second, I just have to answer these questions. I'm not going to do it right now. You just answer these. That's going to spit me out my script. I take that script and I dump it over here. Let's go ahead and open this up. So here was my script. Here was my start. I want to share something that matters to us emotional. When our child came home with a feeding tube, we were giving tape and gauze, right? Let's go ahead and listen to this here real quick.
Here is my start. I want to share something that mattered to us. When our child came home with a feeding tube, we were given tape and gauze. That was it. No one explained how much it would move. No one explained how often it would come loose. We felt like we had...
So, it's good. I can tell that there's some AI, but I don't use what you just see here. I do one more step. And that next step is I dump this 45-second, minute-long video of just basically talking head into a tool called Captions, captions.ai, and it lives on my my phone here. And what I do there is basically prompt it into a really cool-looking ad. There's all kinds of templates. I'm going to show you the final version now. So let's go back over here. Let me back this up. This was the final version of it.
Here's my start. I want to share something that mattered to us. When our child came home with a feeding tube, we were given tape and gauze. That was it. No one explained how much it would move. No one explained how often it would come loose. We felt like we had to figure it out on our own. Then we learned about a device made by a pediatric surgeon. He had seen families struggle the same way. He watched parents leave the hospital with worry on their faces. So I'm
not going to go further, but it's turned into a really good looking ad, right? And that's the ad we were just looking at that was costing like 9 cents, 9 cents a landing page view, right? So you start to see that there could be some scale here. Hold on one quick second here. My son is, hold on, let me put that in. Hold on a second. Sorry, everybody. There we go. All right. So that's a final ad. And again, I'm using Captions to do that. So I didn't leave my desk. I didn't have to pay anybody. I didn't hire anybody. I prompted the script off of the pitch decks. Got this. It's looking good. Throw it into Captions, and I got my ad. Now I can put it into paid ad, throw it into Meta, and have at least some version of what you're seeing here being spit out. And you can see I'm testing these. I don't know where it's going to be. I think there's something here. I think there's a way to sort of potentially even create a UGC sort of army, right? Where you're pushing out all kinds of different personas of what these people might look like. And then also I know that we're very early in this system, right? I don't 100% know where it's going to go, but if this was a year ago, almost 2 years ago, I was paying, $500 for having some guy read a script, for a video. And now this tool costs me $100 a month, right? And we're, again, like I said, we're still early in it, but I do think that there's something here, that as long as you're taking that next step to make it into a good creative ad, I think you have something in there. The other thing that we do too quite a bit in terms of creative is CEOs sitting down and doing podcast interviews. They sit down, we throw it into tools like Opus Clip or Opus Pros, Opus Clip. So you get that long form content, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever it is, you drop them in here, and now you have all your clips, that you can go and and you can run those as ads or run those as stories. So we're at a pretty unique time with creative. Again, for most of my deals, I start with some image ads. I've got some of the AI user generated content, and then I've got CEO founder type story content. And then again, I'm testing all of that just to see what's giving me the best results, what's working more, where I can start to see scale, and start to think about, how do we want to run ads, in terms of the creative. But those are the big things. I hopefully, we're going to wrap this up here. Hopefully we got through the big sort of pillars of what we're looking at here. We've got just the technical side of this equation. Are we set up to actually have the two systems or the two platforms receive data back and forth so they can get smarter? We have the audiences. Who are we sending the ads to? And then last but not least, what are we doing for creative? And that might want to be flipped around. What is the creative? What kind of creative do I have? But yeah, there's definitely a lot we can be doing with creative in today's world with AI and stuff. but you just got to go out and use the tools and try it. So, all right. So I'm going to open up for some questions. I don't know if anybody has any. I know we went a little bit long today, but I do appreciate everybody jumping in and joining. I know that we're in the weeds. If anybody has any questions or anything, yeah, just let me know here. Otherwise, we are going to any questions or anything I can answer. I know there was a lot, quite technical type of a call today. Anybody got anything? No. Thanks, Cedric. Good to see you again. Good to see you. Cool. All right, this. All right, everybody good. Well, again, go to pre-IPOhype.com if you are interested in, learning a little bit more about what we do when it comes to our CRM systems, how we do kind of our drip, our flows. If you're interested in the newsletter company, go to Invest Guru. There it is, no E in invest. And then if you're looking for the data side of it, you can go to kickizer.com. That is our data company. So all of these worlds play together. So if you're interested, reach out. Love to connect, and hope you guys are all well. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining, and we'll talk in a couple weeks with our next one. All right, everybody. Woo, 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 woo. Go get that money. Woo, 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 woo. Yeah, I had an event. I needed him to fucking Hold on, am I on mute? Jesus.
Fine. Well, I'm on my presentation here, so now I'm missing.
No, I'm leaving right now.